You'll notice this is an AI voice. That's because exposing corruption this deep requires anonymity. But I want you to know that every fact, every connection, every slide in this presentation represents hours of research and investigation that I've personally conducted because someone needs to document what's happening to North Carolina's universities. And I'm not talking about some college admissions scandal or a football coach getting paid under the table. I'm talking about something way bigger, something that controls what 23 campuses and hundreds of thousands of students can learn, research, and say about the powerful industries destroying communities across the state. Let's talk about who really runs North Carolina's colleges. The UNC system, 16 campuses, 250,000 students, is overseen by a board of governors. And these three people, they run that board. Wendy Floyd Murphy, chair. Kellie Hunt Blue, vice chair. Pearl Burris-Floyd, secretary. Now, you might think the people running your state's public universities would be educators, maybe some academics, people who care about truth and research and serving the public good. Instead, what you're about to see is a masterclass in corruption. So let's start at the top. Wendy Floyd Murphy, chair of the Board of Governors, married to Del Murphy, net worth $11.7 million. The Murphy family runs River Landing, an upscale golf community. They own the Mad Boar restaurant. They own a hotel. But that's not where the real money comes from. The Murphy fortune was built on pig farms, specifically one of the largest pig farming operations in North Carolina. And that's where this story really begins. Meet Wendell Murphy, Wendy's father-in-law. This man founded Murphy Family Farms and somehow managed to serve in the North Carolina House and Senate while owning that company. And in the year 2000, he sold Murphy Family Farms to Smithfield Foods for over $500 million, $500 million, remember that number. But Wendell Murphy didn't just get rich from pig farming. He fundamentally changed how pig farming works in North Carolina, and he did it in the worst way possible. He created what's called the Murphy model, industrialized hog farming that controls everything from birth to slaughter to packaging. He took the model from poultry operations and scaled it up. Thousands of pigs crammed into enclosed barns, sitting in their own waste. These are called CAFOS, concentrated animal feeding operations. And here's the genius business move. Murphy created a contract farming system that shifted all the financial risk onto individual farmers. These farmers went into massive debt to build the facilities, while Murphy's corporation kept control of the animals and all the profits, privatized the gains, socialized the risks. Classic. Now here's where it gets really good. While Wendell Murphy owned the largest hog farming operation in the state, he was also a state legislator. Let that sink in. And what did legislator Murphy do? In 1986, he helped pass bills eliminating sales taxes on hog and poultry houses. In 1987, he waived sales taxes on CAFO equipment. And in 1991, he prohibited counties from passing zoning ordinances to regulate the hog industry. He literally wrote laws to benefit his own business, laws that made him hundreds of millions of dollars. That's not a conflict of interest. That's just open corruption. But wait, it gets worse. In 1996, 80% of North Carolina legislators received contributions from pro-hog farm interests. 80%. And remember, hog farming is mostly in eastern North Carolina. So why are legislators from the mountains and Charlotte getting hog farm money? Because corruption works. The biggest recipient? Governor Jim Hunt. $119,000. This wasn't about supporting small family farms. This was about buying a state government. In 1995, journalists published the Boss Hog series, and it exposed everything. Environmental hazards, lax regulation, an industry writing its own rules with politicians as cheerleaders. And Murphy, he went on record claiming that waste lagoons would seal themselves and that there was, quote, not one shred Not one piece of evidence anywhere in this nation that any groundwater is being contaminated by a hog lagoon. That was a lie. Studies proved that a large proportion of lagoons were leaking and contaminating groundwater. But Murphy had already made his money, so who cares, right? When Murphy retired from the Senate in 1992, he made sure his replacement would continue the work. Charlie Albertson took over and kept pushing pro-hog industry legislation. And who do you think funded Albertson's campaigns? Murphy himself, among other industry players? The system was locked in. And when Smithfield lost in court to neighbours suing over pollution, Republican legislators immediately rushed to pass laws limiting citizens' ability to hold agricultural companies accountable, protecting corporate giants over rural communities. Between 2018 and 2019, 36 neighbours of hog farms won their cases. Juries awarded them nearly $550 million in damages. Justice, right? Wrong. North Carolina laws capped punitive damages, so courts reduced the total to about $98 million. Laws that Wendell Murphy and his allies helped create decades earlier. They built a system where even when you win, you lose. Fast forward to today. River Landing, that upscale golf community the Murphy family is involved in, had a sewage problem. Sewage was literally spilling out of pumping stations into nearby ponds. So what happened? The development received an $830,000 earmark in the state budget to fix their private sewage crisis with public money. And who volunteered that state funding? Representative Jimmy Dixon, a long-time recipient of Murphy family campaign contributions. It's almost impressive how blatant it is. So what does any of this have to do with North Carolina's universities? Everything. Because when people like the Murphys sit on the board of governors, universities can't do their job. They can't research hog industry environmental impacts without risking funding. They can't publish studies critical of the industry. Faculty who want to study health effects on communities get silenced. And look at this. NC State received a $15 million grant from Smithfield Foods, the company that bought Murphy's operation, to develop environmentally friendly technologies for treating hog waste. You see the problem? When universities take money from the industries they should be studying, everything changes. Researchers can't ask certain questions. The university becomes financially dependent on polluting industries. Studies end up validating industry practices instead of examining them critically. And faculty who might speak out about environmental racism, they stay quiet because money talks. Oh, and Murphy also sponsored legislation funding the RBC Center, home of NC State basketball. When wealthy donors use sports to buy influence, universities become indebted to them. It becomes harder to be independent. Critical inquiry gets replaced by gratitude, and that's exactly the point. So Wendy Floyd Murphy, Wendell's daughter-in-law, now chairs the UNC Board of Governors. This isn't ancient history. This is right now. The person overseeing North Carolina's entire public university system built her family's wealth on an industry founded on environmental destruction and political corruption. And that creates an impossible situation. Universities are supposed to pursue truth and serve the public good, but their governing board chair has every reason to protect an industry built on harming vulnerable communities. When the people running your universities made their fortune from environmental racism, can those universities freely research and teach about environmental racism? What do you think? Okay, that's board member number 1. Let's talk about number 2. Kellie Hunt Blue, vice chair. Blue controls which research gets funded, which professors get tenure, what topics are considered appropriate for study, and whether universities can partner with environmental justice groups. She's got a bachelor's in accounting from UNC Pembroke, previously chaired the UNCP Board of Trustees, and currently serves as county manager for Robeson County. And here's where it gets interesting. The Robeson County landfill has the highest PFAS contamination levels of any landfill in North Carolina. In 2020, Chemours dumped 40 truckloads, 826 tons of contaminated soil containing Gen X into this landfill. In November, the State Department of Waste Management sent Robeson County a letter warning them about contamination levels and ordering them to take immediate action to terminate and control the discharge and mitigate any hazards. The county had 90 days to respond. They never submitted the report. The county manager responsible for this? Kellie Hunt Blue. And the contamination doesn't stop there. Robeson County is home to 300,000 hogs, plus countless chickens and turkeys producing millions of gallons of waste daily. Now here's the kicker. 84% of residents in the census block where this landfill is located are non-white. More than a quarter live below the poverty line. This is textbook environmental racism. Kellie Hunt Blue doesn't have the same obvious corruption as Wendy Murphy. She's not passing laws to enrich herself. But what she represents might actually be worse. She's the face of normalized environmental racism. She's a competent administrator who manages a county that systematically poisons its poorest, most minority residents. She oversees environmental violations without consequences, and then she gets promoted to govern the universities that should be exposing exactly these problems. Think about what this means. UNC universities should be training environmental justice lawyers. They should be researching environmental racism in eastern North Carolina. They should be teaching about civil rights violations. But the vice chair of their governing board is actively overseeing a county committing these violations. How can faculty freely research and teach about environmental racism when the person who controls their careers is responsible for environmental racism? All right, board member number 3. Pearl Burris-Floyd, Secretary of the Board of Governors. Burris-Floyd is a registered lobbyist for the Greensboro Area Chamber of Commerce. She's actively lobbying while governing public universities. That alone should disqualify her. But it gets so much worse. Burris-Floyd is the Chief Government Affairs Officer at Partners Behavioral Health. Partners is a healthcare organization managing hundreds of millions in Medicaid and state behavioral health dollars across 15 counties. And emails show that Partners hired former state legislators as lobbyists to pressure county officials into switching from a competitor to Partners. Burris-Floyd's employer is aggressively lobbying to expand its Medicaid territory and increase its revenue, while she sits on the Board of Governors. Let's talk numbers. Partners Behavioral Health manages over $500 million in Medicaid funds annually. Burris-Floyd's job, literally her job title, is Chief Government Affairs Officer. That means she advocates for Partners' business interests. She wants Partners to grow and control more counties. She benefits when Partners gets more Medicaid dollars. She lobbies legislators to favor Partners. That's her day job. Now, as BOG secretary, she has influence over every healthcare program in the UNC system. The UNC School of Social Work training social workers, ECU's medical school training doctors and psychiatrists, UNC's School of Public Health researching healthcare policy, every nursing program, UNC's law school training healthcare attorneys. See the problem yet? Here's what social work students should be learning. How organizations like Partners prioritize profits over patients. Why behavioral health contractors lobby aggressively for territory. How the revolving door between government and healthcare corporations works. How to advocate for clients against powerful healthcare management entities. But can they learn this? The person who governs their school works for one of those entities. She has every incentive to make sure they don't learn this. Public health students should be studying whether Medicaid managed care actually improves patient outcomes, how administrative costs devour Medicaid dollars, whether consolidating power into organizations like Partners actually serves patients, conflicts of interest when healthcare executives govern universities. But their research might threaten Partners' entire business model. And the person governing their program works for Partners. Law students should learn about healthcare fraud in Medicaid managed care. Conflicts of interest in public contracting, lobbying ethics, how to sue organizations that deny patient care. But Partners could be the defendant in those lawsuits. How can law professors freely teach students to hold healthcare companies accountable when a healthcare company executive governs their university? And fraud is real. A Lumberton behavioral health provider just paid $2.5 million to settle allegations of falsely billing Medicaid for services never rendered. Partners, as an oversight organization, is supposed to prevent this fraud. But Partners is too busy lobbying to expand its territory. So the question becomes, is Partners focused on oversight or growth and profit? Burris-Floyd's career is the revolving door in action. County Commissioner, Government State Representative, Lawmaker, Chamber of Commerce Executive, Business Lobbying, VP of Government Affairs, Corporate Lobbying, Senior Advisor to the State Health Secretary, back to government, Chief Government Affairs Officer at Partners, Healthcare Lobbying, Board of Governors Secretary, Governing Education. She spent her entire career moving between government and corporate lobbying, and now she governs public universities. So let's recap. The chair of North Carolina's Board of Governors built her family fortune on an environmentally destructive industry that bought political influence. The vice chair manages a county actively committing environmental racism against its poorest residents. And the secretary is a corporate lobbyist for a healthcare company managing $500 million in public funds. These three people control what North Carolina's public universities can teach, research, and say. This isn't ancient corruption. This is happening right now. And until people understand how deep this goes, nothing changes. Share this, talk about it, because our universities can't serve the public good when they're controlled by the people harming the public.